Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for CITI Programs webinar. Today's topic is building a ClinicalTrials.gov compliance program. Tips for investigators and institutions, and it will be presented by Anthony Keys. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be available on the CITI Programs website. Anthony Keys is a program manager with 15 years experience in clinical trial management. He directs the Johns Hopkins ClinicalTrials.gov program and co-chairs the Clinical Trial Task Force. He received his MBA from Johns Hopkins University, a BS from the University of Maryland, and is a certified project management professional.
So before we get started, I just wanted to make sure we understood the difference between the two different ClinicalTrials.gov systems. Many of you may be familiar with ClinicalTrials.gov, and that is a website you can go to here that's available to anyone around the world. Now, if you have a PRS account, a Protocol Registration and Results System account, you actually go to register.clinicaltrials.gov with an organization and then username and password where you enter information into the PRS. Now, what some people don't understand is that the information entered into the PRS side is not made available to the internationally publicly available side until it has undergone a review process. And sometimes that review process can be quite extended. So therefore, the information contained in an individual account's PRS and what's available for the world to see may actually be quite different information. So today, we will talk about the main regulations and policies that govern registration and results reporting on ClinicalTrials.gov. We'll look at the risks and liabilities, both to individual investigators and to institutions, and there are quite a few. And then we'll look at some very practical ways for organizations, no matter what your size. You could be an account like Hopkins with 2,000 records or somebody just starting out with 1 or 2 records. But I hope each and every person, each and every entity will actually get something specific they can take back. Even if you have already had a program in place for quite some time, there's 55% that are already administrators. I hope you get something out of it. And there's folks who are still not clear what the PRS even is. I hope you will definitely benefit from this as well. So what is a clinical trial in terms of the NIH? Well, there's a very specific definition written here for you on this slide, but it does incorporate a wide range of studies. And I chose to pull this image in that's right on the NIH website to show you that studies that you normally wouldn't think are clinical trials for NIH actually are. This includes pilot studies, feasibility studies, even behavioral studies have to abide by the policy because they technically meet the distinction of an NIH clinical trial. There is a decision tree that you can click on and actually walks you through. And then there are 4 questions that they list on the website. Does it involve human participants, prospectively assigned, to evaluate the effect of an intervention, and is it on a health-related biomedical or behavioral outcome? If the answer to all 4 of these questions is yes, then your study does meet the NIH determination of a clinical trial, and therefore you must register and report the results of that research in accordance with the NIH dissemination policy. Now, there are a myriad of case studies that are constantly being updated. I think there's over. So let's very quickly get through these regulations, and then we'll move on to the next topic. I bring this up as a source of reference as well. There are several different entities, all with different registration and results reporting policies, all with different associated penalties. So just be aware. What I'll mention here is the VA, the Veterans Health Administration, has a slightly different registration policy in that although they do require prior to enrollment, they will not release funding until you are registered, which is something that they've adopted and other institutions may soon adopt as well. I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming months or years, other entities, maybe possibly including the NIH, will adopt a similar policy. This policy is also the case at the Department of Defense, who also requires registration prior to release of funding. There are several other regulations that regarding Medicare and Medicaid billing. If you bill anything to Medicare and Medicaid services, you must register that study and report that NCT, that National Clinical Trial Number that you get when you register, when you submit that bill to Medicare or Medicaid. The other thing I'll mention here at the bottom is that the International Clinical Trials Registry Platform, or the ICTRP, requires registration. And this is a group of non-governmental agencies, including some of the largest funders in the world. So if you're receiving funds from the Wellcome Trust, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or several other large entities that spend billions of dollars worldwide. So why is this important? Who's watching it? Well, I've already mentioned that institutions need to be responsible stewards of funds. I already mentioned that we need to honor their participants' commitment to our research studies by producing high quality results. Others are watching too. And for many years, many publications have highlighted that academia is not doing a very good job. Now, some journals more recently, like Stat News and others, have now de-identified those compliance rates and said not that academia was doing a bad job, but this particular academic site was doing this bad of a job. And historically, Hopkins has been picked on as being one of the worst offenders. And historically, we have had very poor compliance. So what we did was develop a program to get us back into shape and to build a program that honors the commitment of research participants and for all the reasons that we need to do this. So most recently, this article came out earlier this year, and the 40 institutions included in the analysis, 15 of them have actually achieved 100% compliance. And this tells you at least two things. One, institutions are doing much, much better. And then I'll leave you with some closing thoughts. Collaboration is key, both internal of your institution and external with other institutions, maybe through the task force or through other means. Let people know about why this is important. And if you're having trouble getting resources, you may need to make a business case. And what I mean by that is one of the reasons we were able to get a second FTE is because I was able to articulate to our vice dean that our institutional liability was such that it demanded a response of actually hiring another person. Because when you look at the civil monetary penalties, when you look at people being denied publication, when you look at the potential loss of grant funding to the institution, this is something that demands institutions respond by devoting sufficient resources. And what is sufficient for one institution may not be for the other. Some institutions can be fine just having a person look at this a couple days a week. Institutions like at our size need 2 full-time people. So your institution may be somewhere in the middle. So if you're having trouble getting resources, try to make the business case. And that's pretty easy to make in this case. Educate investigators. If all you can do is just help them a little bit, that's great. If you can provide one-on-one assistance, even better. And let them know about important changes. If there's a website that you use for articles of interest, or if there's a communication forum or listserv among research coordinators or the research community at your institution, let them know about important changes that are coming up. And then work with your IRB and other internal systems to optimize things. The best way to make sure that your organization is continually accurate and up to date is to make sure that you're using the most accurate and up-to-date information. And often that comes from systems and resources other than the ones you would primarily consider. I mentioned before the drive towards full compliance. I encourage everybody to try to get to 100% and stay there. And then publish your efforts. Talk about this, do posters, do presentations, do webinars like this, and make sure you get the word out there. This is really important to get right. And institutions now 3 years into this are still struggling a little bit with this. So I personally want to do everything I can to encourage and help institutions, and we've helped dozens of institutions over the years, but just publish your efforts. If you're doing anything in this area and it works, put it out there so other people can know as we continually all work towards best practices.
Just to conclude, we encourage you to monitor the CITI program's website for additional information about future webinars, available on-demand recordings of past webinars, and our new all-access webinar package.